Well, look, we live in a democracy, and the right to demonstrate is one of our most sacred rights. I've demonstrated many times when I haven't been in government, and I think it's good that people should feel that they have the right, the ability, and where they have the desire, the opportunity to demonstrate when they think it's appropriate and necessary. And so I've obviously welcomed the demonstrators and received their communication.
Where do you go from here? Will you be meeting with the group?
Well, the group were offered a meeting today, but they said that they did not want a meeting. I mean, I gave them the opportunity to come and explain further what the issues that they might be concerned about were. They wanted simply to hand in their letter. They have handed in their letter signed by the organizer of this group, James Parodi, and I'll be having regard to that letter in coming days and weeks.
And what are your thoughts on the rather long list of complaints contained in the letter?
Well, I haven't received a long list of issues. I've received a 2-paragraph letter, which is half a page of A4, and that's what that has been handed in to me today, and that's what I will be responding to in due course.
One of the issues raised during the demonstration is the fact that this group would like to see a referendum go out on the treaty if they're not happy with it. You have said previously that that is not your intention. Can you tell us what your position is at this moment?
So my position is not the position of Fabian Picardo, it's the position of the government of Gibraltar, the position of the cabinet. We do not consider that an agreement on immigration and potentially on the movement of goods, that is to say trade between Gibraltar and the European Union, is something that has to go to a referendum unless it were to affect the constitutional status of Gibraltar or the sovereignty of Gibraltar. Of course, these are issues that will be debated in Parliament, but we are negotiating now, and I can tell you for nothing that if I was to announce now that any agreement that we emerge with from these negotiations would be put to a referendum, it would immediately destroy our ability to negotiate the best possible deal with our counterparts across the table for the EU and, of course, Spain and the other member states, because they would think that they are negotiating with the 32,000 Gibraltarians with 32,000 different opinions and not with a government that is empowered to reach an agreement. And so, therefore, our position remains exactly as I've set out.
No to Frontex was one of the chants outside Number Six. What's your response to that?
Well, Gibraltar doesn't, the government of Gibraltar doesn't respond to a chant. The government of Gibraltar responds to the interests of the people of Gibraltar and ensuring that we protect the things that have been sacrosanct for the people of Gibraltar for many generations. The sovereignty of Gibraltar, therefore also the jurisdiction of Gibraltar and the control of Gibraltar's frontiers. And what we want to structure is a future relationship with the European Union in relation to immigration, which protects all of those things. And in the context of the Frontex statutory core, I think that can be an important way of diffusing the sovereignty issues that might arise if, instead of having to propose an independent entity like Frontex, which is a freestanding entity, we had to deal with the presence of Spanish law enforcement in Gibraltar, because that is not something that the government of Gibraltar that I lead would ever accept, and therefore this is a compromise that we believe might, in the context of a wider treaty that works for Gibraltar, be a solution that is positive. My obligation as the Chief Minister of Gibraltar, and the obligation of my government as Gibraltar's Cabinet and Council of Ministers, is to find that right balance to ensure that we bring the right deal back for the people of Gibraltar, and either recommend it or for that reason, because it's not a good deal for Gibraltar, tell the people of Gibraltar that we will not accept it.
Chief Minister, finally, on the wider issue of democracy, the group says, the demonstrators say, Gibraltar belongs to the people. What is your response to that?
Gibraltar belongs to the people of Gibraltar. That is to say, the registered Gibraltarians, who will be the ones who will decide Gibraltar's political future now and forever. And nobody should for one moment believe that they will decide the political future of Gibraltar if they are not the people of Gibraltar. But you've got to also understand that the electorate in Gibraltar chooses a government every 4 years. We have been chosen 2 years ago. We are halfway through our third term. Look, you might say, in terms of political analysis, that this is when you would expect that the government might be putting more noses out of joint. In fact, I wouldn't think that that's the right characterization. I think people do need to factor into the equation that we have been through the two most hellish years in public administration that this community has ever been through, except perhaps the initial period in 1967 to 1972, that period before the restrictions and the closure of the frontier. This has been exceedingly difficult. I cannot pretend to explain to you just how difficult this has been. It has been our role to steer Gibraltar through that period. And Gibraltar, in the context which is not perhaps the context that people want to consider, which is the context of in comparison to other mainstream European states, much larger economies than our own, is not doing badly at all in many respects. And I would urge people to have the patience to permit the government to get ourselves back on track as we go through the final ructions of this pandemic, as we finally give shape to what we hope will be a positive and good treaty, safe for Gibraltar also in the relationship between the United Kingdom and the European Union over Gibraltar going forward, and to give us the time to do all that and to get ourselves back on track, which is what the whole of this community needs, the whole of what the world is trying to do.